Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Spurs in crisis, and this is perfect for the video I wanted to do today anyway. I want to frame it as who's going to get top four, but we can frame it around the fact that Spurs are in crisis and I don't think they're going to get top four. Horrible news about Son, by the way. I love this player, and I actually thought he was going to miss the Liverpool game because of maybe a concussion because of the clash he had against Marseille, but apparently it's a fracture to the cheekbone which puts his involvement in the World Cup in crisis. I mean, how many more players are we going to lose from this ridiculous World Cup? I mean, look, we're all going to watch the World Cup, but the timing of when it is preposterous, and we'll lose more in the next couple of weeks. We will do. So fingers crossed Son's going to be back. But what does it mean for Spurs, and what does it mean for the top four race? That's what we're going to be talking about. But before we talk about that, today's show is sponsored by lovely people at Surfshark. You know we've worked with them before. The QR code is next to me to scan it. What is Surfshark? It's a virtual private network, which means that it's fantastic for protecting your data, services, your private messages, your photos, your videos, and other sensitive material. But my personal favourite thing about Surfshark, and the thing I think you're going to like most of all, is you can change your location on Netflix or other location-specific streaming services. So if you're on holiday in Hawaii or India or Australia or wherever you are, you can just change your location to London, UK, and log into your Netflix, and it will think that's where you are. So works really, really well with that. You can use Surfshark across as many devices as you like, even if they're used at the same time. It's also available on every device you can think of: Android, iOS, Amazon Fire, and all those. And it's even got a feature, one of them being the alert feature. This feature will notify you when your personal information has been leaked online. And because Surfshark are super nice, they're giving That's Football viewers 83% off and 3 months free when you use the code That's Football. That's right, they're giving not one, not two, but 3 months free when you use the code That's Football. Link is in the video description as ever. Check it out. If you've got a virtual private network, check out Surfshark. You'll know what they're all about. If you haven't, well worth checking it out. Really good. And big shout out to Surfshark. So look, let's get on with the video. Spurs, I nearly said Spurs Shark. Yeah, look, Spurs. Are Spurs boring? Yes. Are Spurs in crisis? Yes. Are Spurs going to miss out on top four? Yes, in my opinion. Now, I will say this. I don't dislike Spurs. I've always said that Spurs are, and I know Arsenal fans don't like Spurs, and probably Chelsea fans, and I think a lot of people don't like Spurs this season because they're boring, by the way, and I would join that club. But I've never minded Spurs, whether it was Harry Redknapp, whether it was back in the years ago, or Pochettino, even with Conte at the end of last season. I thought they were massively exciting with Kulusevski and Kane and Son, but this season they've become really hard to watch, and I know a few Spurs fans and they feel the same, and I think they're in a bit of a crisis. I think they've arguably had one of their best seasons ever, which is obvious. And I think, speaking to Spurs fans, and I do my Talk Sports show on a Saturday night, and maybe I'll get a few calls now on Saturday night because of this, but speaking to Spurs fans when they call in, or I speak to the ones I know, they're sort of on this balance board of, look, the results are good, but the football's boring. You want good football and not to be in the position we're in. But I think that, look at the Bournemouth game, look at the Marseille game. They're late wins. How often can that happen? And can they get top four? So look, I think that with Spurs, the reason they're getting these late wins that are obviously great for their fans is because they're approaching games in a very negative way. I thought the first half against Marseille was a disgrace. The way that they defend, 70% possession for Marseille, I think it was above that. And just parking the bus like that, it's French league team that's in 5th place. You are in the top four in the Premier League. You do not need to go there and do that. And it could have cost them. It really could have done. And I know it works out for Spurs, and they're still in the Champions League and they're still in the top four. So they'll be going, well, we're having a good season. But I think it's a false dawn. And with no Son now, I think Kulusevski should be back soon. But they're just so lackluster. They're so boring to watch. And it's a complete contrast to last year. They move the ball slowly. They're so reliant on set pieces. You can see why Harry Kane might not want to sign a new contract. You can see why there's these rumours that Son would like a move. And I think that it's basically because they'll look at it like anyone looks at it and goes, this Spurs side is in a false position. You're never in a false position, really, but over a 38-game season, will they be in the top four? And I don't think that they will, unless they replicate what they did in January last year, where they go and add a couple of players to bring something in. I'm surprised that Bassuma's not settled. I'm surprised that he still uses Emerson at right back and doesn't give Jed Spence a go. I know Longley scored the other day, but I just find them really difficult to watch. And I'll always give people a chance. I'll always give teams a chance. We watch a lot of football on here, and it's not United because I've got the United stand for that. And ultimately, I like the Brightons. I like the teams like that will entertain you, and Newcastle. But Spurs, that's the thing, isn't it? Brighton are more entertaining than Spurs. Newcastle are more entertaining than Spurs. You could argue Southampton are more entertaining than Spurs. They've just become very, very pragmatic. Now there are people who think, well, this is just because of the season. Conte is trying to conserve energy for the second part of the season. And to be honest with you, it's not like you can look at Spurs' results and go, they've had a lot of easy games. I think after the World Cup and after Christmas, they play Man United at home, Chelsea at home, Arsenal at home, Man City at home. So they've got the fixtures there in the second half to capitalise, and they're in a good position. But I don't think they're going to get top four. I don't think they're going to get top four. I think Arsenal will. I think Man City obviously will. I actually think Liverpool will. And I think that it will be between Chelsea, United, and maybe Newcastle for that other spot. I don't see Spurs doing it unless they just switch that switch, which we know they can, because it's almost like they've got two different managers. Conte, in the last few months of last season, I know they had a little blip when they lost to, I think it was Southampton and Wolves at home, but they played good football. This year, they're playing so negative, they're playing so boring, which means that they're grinding out the results. But can you grind out top four the way that Spurs are playing? I don't think you can. I think there has to be a change-up. And it certainly can happen, but at this moment in time, I think they are weirdly in a position where they're in a bit of a crisis. Third in the league, 10 points clear of Liverpool, 3 points ahead of Manchester United and 5 points ahead of Chelsea. I think they're 2 points ahead of Newcastle. But Chelsea got a game in hand on them. Man United have got a game in hand on them, and Liverpool have got a game in hand on them, and they play them on Sunday. If Liverpool beat this weakened Spurs side on Sunday, that would be a 7-point gap, and then they win their game in hand, that's a 4-point gap. If Man United win their game in hand, they're level with Spurs. Chelsea win their game in hand, they're 2 points off Spurs. I just think they're vulnerable. I think they are vulnerable in relation to top four. I think it looks great at the moment, but if they lose to Liverpool at the weekend, Liverpool get back into it. So I just think Spurs at the moment. And you've always got to look at positives. They have played good football under Conte. They've got some really, really good players, and they did really well in the January transfer market, and they're in third place. So it's not doom and gloom for Spurs, but I've got to say, as a casual observer of Spurs, they are just very, very hard to watch. They're not the sort of team that you go, I want to watch Spurs play, and that's normally the opposite. They don't win anything, but they do entertain. Maybe this is the approach to go down. Maybe it is, but it just doesn't feel right with Spurs to me at the moment. And I'm intrigued to what your thoughts are. And maybe we've got a few Spurs fans in there, but they're a hard watch. They're really hard. And I think some of his team selections are difficult as well. Again, looking at it from the outside, I think that Emerson is dreadful, and yet he plays him all the time. Now, I'm not saying Jed Spence should start. I mean, I think he's a good player, but I'm not training. I don't know what's going on in the training ground. But I think Doherty's way better than Emerson Royale. I don't get that. I get the fact that he likes Bentancur, and obviously he's got Højbjerg in there, but I think Bissouma's a fantastic footballer, and why is he not settled? I think it's a bad move for him as well. I just think that Spurs have recruited players in the summer, apart from Richarlison that's worked out well, and Perisic has worked out well, but Perisic is obviously Italian. That's where he's not Italian, he's Croatian, but he's played all his football in Italy, basically. But a lot of his football in Italy. I know he was at Bayern Munich. But yeah, the Bissouma and Jed Spence signings just don't seem to make any sense, because they don't seem to fit in with the way that Conte wants to play football in this very pragmatic way. I look at Bissouma at Brighton, and he's a player that they play out from the back. He plays with his back to the opposition. He's happy to receive the ball and play it. And you look at him in the Spurs system, and he doesn't actually look that good. And if you hadn't seen him at Brighton, you'd go, why did they spend that money on him? So it's weird, because then you go, well, Conte's pretty much picking the team from last year, but they're not playing anything like the team from last year. So look, it doesn't make any difference to me. I found Spurs very entertaining last year. I can watch football in a pragmatic way myself and say that, look, I don't really want Arsenal to win the league, but I can see what Arteta's done over the last few years. There's been a gradual progression. Their football at the start was a bit pragmatic and grind out results. They won the FA Cup. He bought his own players in. They've gradually got better and better, and now they look like a team that if they can build their bench out, they could be competing for titles, even this year. I'm sure Spurs fans look at that and go, you want a vision, don't you? Even at United, we've got a vision under Ten Hag. We're not doing it every week, but we've seen glimpses, and you think with more players and more time, we could do what Arsenal's done and start being consistently easy on the eye to watch. I think for Spurs, it's a bit confusing because they've got a great manager. Conte's a great manager. They had this entertaining style of football at the end of last season that's become this sort of Mourinho-style football again, where you're just grinding results out. And what's the future for that as well? What is the future for that? I think Mourinho's a very good comparison. Mourinho, basically, you know what you get. You're probably going to end up with a title, and after 3 years, he's going to go. Is that what Spurs want? Do they want to play this style of football to get top four again and then Conte leaves in the summer? What's the longevity of that? You want a vision. You want what Arteta's doing at Arsenal. You want what Ten Hag's trying to do. You want what Pep and Klopp have done. I don't know what the vision is with Spurs at the moment. It's confusing. And you go back to what you said before, or I said before, where you got this balancing act where they are doing very well in relation to qualification for the Champions League knockout stage, and they're in third place in the Premier League, but then the football is dire. Well, where's the long term? Are you going to win the Premier League like this? You're probably only going to get top four. Are you going to win the Champions League? No. And what's the long-term vision? Are we going to keep doing this forever? Are we going to switch the switch and start playing well? Is Harry Kane going to sign a new contract? It's uncertainty for Spurs. And I think it's a great debate because I think there'll be Spurs fans going, oh, shut up, we're in third place, worry about yourselves. I get that. But I watch a lot of football like a lot of people, and I don't find Spurs entertaining. And I don't think Spurs will get top four unless there's a change in the way that you play football, because it's too drab. Newcastle play good football. They're right behind you. Chelsea under Potter are going to get better and they're going to spend better. Manchester United, I mean, look, I don't know whether we will get top four, but Liverpool, I can't see Liverpool hanging around for long. And it's a massive game between Liverpool and Spurs on Sunday. And if Spurs avoid defeat, that will help them. But I think top four, Manchester City, Arsenal. I think Liverpool will get in there, probably fourth place, to be honest. And then I think the fourth spot will go to probably Chelsea or Man United, maybe Newcastle. I can't decide that, but I'm very confident that it will be Arsenal, Man City, and I do think Liverpool will make it. And then I'm undecided on Chelsea, Newcastle, or Manchester United. And Spurs have got to get themselves in that. What I can see happening with Spurs is in the top four at the start, and they're just going to gradually start to drop off. And how do they stop that? How do they stop that? It's a very challenging season this year, and ultimately, I think the January transfer window is key for Spurs as well. What are they going to do? They did it brilliantly last year. What are they going to do? Because ultimately, I think we will revisit this. But if Spurs can get to Christmas in that top four, which they probably will do with only 2 game weeks left, and then they do well in the January transfer window, then they start playing like they did last year, and just let loose a little bit, maybe they'll do it. But so far, it's hard to see, in my opinion. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And don't forget Surfshark. You can get 83% off in the first 3 months free. Virtual private network. Fantastic, fantastic thing. Check it out, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks for watching. Take care.